Good morning, and welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West. Welcome to this community of compassionate and courageous individuals who come together in search of greater connection to all that is. Every one of us is encouraged to discover and to share our unique gifts with each other and our world. I'm Deb Ruesch, and I'm a member of the worship ministry team. It's good to be here with you today leading this online service. If you are new to UUCW Church West, we want to give you an extra special welcome and encourage you to check out. First of all, I want to say that checking out any spiritual community, even in these times of online services, is a courageous act. And so we are very grateful to have you with us. But we would also love to connect with you and encourage you to leave us a message at visitor@uucw.org if you're interested in learning more about our community. And now I'd like to introduce those individuals who have contributed to our service. I'd like to thank members Kathy Bradshaw for our chalice lighting, Carrie Balistreri for providing the offering words and offertory. Of course, I'd like to recognize our lead music director, Jennifer Nicolosi, who you just heard playing, our music director, Ruben Purainen, for our music today. Thanks also to Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Education, for providing today's worship for all ages, to Kelly Bogner, our publications coordinator, and Vicki Banville, Church Administrator, for their expertise and assistance in bringing today's service together. Of course, a very special thank you goes out to our pulpit guest today, who, in my opinion, needs no introduction. Because I've been with him 24/7 for more than a year now during this pandemic, but I wouldn't have it any other way. He's a published writer, a prolific storyteller, entrepreneurial go-getter, and in reference to his written work, he's known as the Green Guy. He's a UUCW member, my love, and an all-around fun guy. And I don't mean that he's a mushroom, but he does study mushrooms and knows which ones you can eat. So I'd like to welcome Dale Yelich. Honey, go, please. He'll be back later. He'll be back later with some reflections. On behalf of our congregation and guests who have come together this morning, we welcome and thank you for being here with us today. Please join us now for our chalice lighting.
To play means doing the things we do just for fun, just because we want to do them. Play opens our hearts to new possibilities and lets us rest the parts of ourselves that we use too much at work, school, and for all the things we have to do. We Unitarian Universalists like working for justice and equality. We like caring for our good planet Earth. But we like to play too. We like to play with theology and spirituality, using music, art, stories, and dance with all our friends, neighbors, and children. In the spirit of play, we light this chalice.
Thank you, Kathy. I can think of no better person to have shared that this morning. She is a very playful, wonderful individual. And I love that chalice display as well. It's very beautiful and uplifting. So hopefully it will cheer you up for today's service and beyond. You are now invited to join in singing hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, as performed and led by Jennifer Nicolosi, our lead music director.
Rejoice and come in. Thank you so much for that. I am Dave Cicero. Good morning. And our theme for this month for worship and for religious education is play. And that's religious ed for all ages, just a reminder. Play is important for us all. And as we explore today the power of play, I'll share with you a story of a young girl who just loves to play baseball. So much that it's just about all she cares to do or think about. Now, I don't know about you, but somehow I've been conditioned to think, at least initially, that this might not be the most responsible thing to do. But then I also recognize that play is basically work for kids. It's how we learn. It's how the playful part inside each of us engages with an activity that we naturally want to do. And that's how we grow. So what playful activity do you just love to do? And what is it about that activity that makes it so fun that you just keep coming back to it? Now, I was never good enough as a kid to make it onto any competitive sports teams, but that didn't stop me from playing them with my friends. What I really love is that no game plays out the same as any previous one. Even within the structure of a sport's rules, the outcome is always a surprise. So let's see what Marcinia's love of baseball led to in today's story, Catching the Moon, the story of a young girl's baseball dream by Crystal Hubbard, illustrated by Randy DeBurke, and read today with permission by Lee and Low Books. Marcinia Lyle loved baseball. She loved the powdery taste of the dust clouds as she slid through them. She loved the way the sun heated her hair as she crouched in the outfield, waiting for fly balls. And she loved the sting in her palm as a baseball slammed into it, right before tagging a runner out. If there was anything in the world better than baseball, Marcinia didn't know what it was. She dreamed of growing up to be a professional baseball player, so she could play all of the time. I wish I knew why you liked baseball so much, Mama sighed as she gently washed Marcinia's hair. Marcinia shrugged. Mama often questioned Marcinia's interest in baseball, particularly when washing field dirt from her hair. It's just fun, Marcinia said, giving her mother the same response she always did. Playing dolls is fun, Mama said. Marcinia blew a puff of lather from her palm. Not as much fun as baseball. After Marcinia crawled to bed, Papa appeared at the doorway. What'd you learn at school today? He asked. Some history? Papa crossed his arms. And how did your team do in the game after school? Harold got a triple in his first at bat, and Clarence tagged out 2 runners? Marcinia said eagerly. I struck out my first time at bat, but then I caught a deep fly ball that would have scored the tying run for the other team if I'd have missed it. We won 11-10. Marcinia's smile gleamed like the noonday sun as she shared the details of the victory. We won the game, Marcinia said one more time. And you also ripped another dress, Papa said, dismayed. Then he kissed Marcinia's cheek and turned off the light, leaving her alone with moonlight and shadows of her dream of becoming a baseball player. The tiny house was still. Marcinia could almost hear her mother's needle and thread moving through the fabric as she sat at the kitchen table mending Marcinia's dress. After a while, Marcinia heard Papa's voice. I wish she would think about school as much as she thinks on baseball. She wants to be a baseball player when she grows up, Mama said with a sad chuckle. I just want her to be happy. She'll be what every other girl in the neighborhood will be, Papa grumbled. A teacher, a nurse, or a maid, Mama said softly. I'm going to score 3 runs tomorrow, Marcinia promised the darkness as she clapped her hands over her ears. I'm going to hit a home run, too. The next day after school, Marcinia went to the playground. The other girls stayed on the hardtop to play hopscotch, jump rope, or jacks. The boys were huddled at the mound, talking quietly. They cast excited glances at the man who was watching the field from the bleachers. Do you know who he is? Harold asked Marcinia as she joined the group. That there is Mr. Gabby Street. He's running a baseball day camp this summer. Marcinia knew about Gabby Street. He was the manager for the St. Louis Cardinals. What's he want? Marcinia asked. Kids for his baseball camp, Harold said. It's got to be right here on this field. Every day except Sunday. Sundays are game days. What's the cost? Marcinia asked. It's free. It's free, said Clarence. All you need is your own glove and baseball cleats, Harold added. Marcinia could hardly contain her excitement. She would do anything to be one of the players in Mr. Street's camp. That afternoon, Marcinia played with purpose. She scooped grounders, catching them into her body to make sure they didn't bounce away. She slid into second, keeping so low she wouldn't be tagged. She kept her eyes on each pitch, waiting for a good one to send over the fence. She scored 3 runs, just like she wanted, and hit a homer. When Mr. Street approached the players after the game, Marcinia crowded in close so he could see her. I just saw some good ball, Mr. Street said, smiling. Who wants to come to my baseball camp and really learn to play this game? Every hand went up. Mr. Street shook them all. He shook Marcinia's hand last. You've got a good arm, little miss, and you run fast, he said. But I don't take girls in my camp. Marcinia looked down so no one could see her disappointment. She began striking dust from her dress. Marcinia has been playing ball with us since we were little kids, Harold told Mr. Street. She's the only player who ever steals bases. Marcinia was pleased that her friends had come to her defense, but Mr. Street didn't change his mind. As she walked home, she thought about how these very same boys had teased her when she first started playing baseball with them. When they saw that she could run, hit, and throw as well as they could, they stopped teasing. They had let her play. Marcinia decided to give Mr. Street a reason to change his mind. Every day, Marcinia played baseball, and every day Mr. Street refused to invite her to his camp. Then came a day when Marcinia got tired of hearing him say, I don't take girls in my camp. That day, when she was on third base, in the 9th inning of a tie game, Marcinia decided to take the biggest chance in all baseball. She decided to steal home. When the pitcher drew back his arm to throw the ball to Harold, Marcinia launched into motion. The catcher snared the pitch in his glove and ran toward Marcinia to tag her out. Marcinia doubled back toward third. When the catcher threw the ball back to the third baseman, Marcinia turned and bolted toward home plate. As the ball sailed over her head, Marcinia pumped her arms and knees harder. With the ball speeding toward home, Marcinia dropped her weight and slid into home plate. She had stolen home and scored the winning run. While her teammates celebrated their victory, Marcinia planted her hands on her hips and faced Mr. Street. I am a baseball player, she said. I want to learn to play this game as well as I can. May I come to your camp? Well, little miss, if you can steal home, you can probably do anything you set your mind to, Mr. Street said. You can come to my camp as long as you have your equipment. When Marcinia told her parents the good news about the camp that evening, her father was not pleased. I don't like you acting like such a tomboy, he said with a snap of his evening paper. Besides, you know we don't have any money to spend on. The camp's free, Marcinia said excitedly. But equipment isn't free, Papa said. Now, Mr. Street was at the field the next time Marcinia played. Before the game, she mustered all her strength to keep from crying. Mr. Street, she said, I can't come to your camp. I don't have cleats, and my father says we can't afford them, but thank you for inviting me. Although she was sad, Marcinia played as well as she always had. She loved baseball too much not to play with all her heart. That night, unable to sleep, Marcinia gazed through her window at the full moon glowing in the sky. It was so round and bright, like a brand new baseball. She reached to the floor and took up her baseball glove. She put it on and punched the pocket as if the moon would jump into it, just like so many fly balls had before. Marcinia wondered sadly if Papa was right. Maybe girls didn't grow up to be ball players after all. But playing baseball was her dream, and Marcinia couldn't imagine doing anything else. The next day after school, Marcinia was the first one at the playing field. Mr. Street was already there and waved Marcinia over. "You're a good ball player, Marcinia," he said. "I want good ball players for my camp." He handed Marcinia a box and watched as she opened it. Her eyes widened as she pulled out a shoe with each hand. These weren't just any shoes, they were real baseball cleats. "Thank you, Mr. Street." Marcinia was so excited she could barely squeeze out the words. She hugged those shoes to her chest. They were even better than stealing home. "Don't you have a game to play?" Mr. Street said, nodding toward the field. "Yes, I do," Marcinia replied happily. Her fingers flew as they unbuckled her street shoes and laced on her new cleats. They fit perfectly. She ran in them, she jumped in them, she caught and slid in them, and she hit a home run. After the game, the boys rushed to Mr. Street, talking over one another about the game. Marcinia lingered at home plate. She stared at her feet, proud of the new scuffs and smudges on her shoes. They had been a little stiff at first, but now that she had played a good game of baseball in them, the cleats were exactly the way she wanted them to be. Mr. Street excused himself from the crowd of boys. "I look forward to seeing you in camp," he said to Marcinia. She gave him a hopeful smile, but Marcinia knew she still had one more person to convince before she could officially accept Mr. Street's invitation. She ran home and waited anxiously for her father to return from work. As soon as her father arrived, Marcinia showed him her new cleats. "Now, Marcinia, where'd you get those shoes?" Papa asked sternly. "Mr. Street gave them to me," Marcinia said. "He wants me to come to his baseball camp." Papa looked down at Marcinia's baseball cleats, which were already scuffed and dusted with field dirt. "You must be a pretty good ball player for an important man like Mr. Street to buy you those shoes," he admitted. Then he smiled. "You know I don't like charity, but I reckon we can't give those shoes back in this state. I'll have to thank Mr. Street for his generosity when I take you down to that baseball camp." Marcinia could hardly believe her ears. Papa had agreed. Her chest filled with joy. She threw her arms around her father, hugging him hard. "You'll see how good I am," she cried. Marcinia felt as proud and happy as if she had reached right up in the sky and caught the moon in her glove. She was on her way to becoming a real baseball player. She would make her dream come true. Indeed, Marcinia Lyle, who grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, did make her dream come true. Making her mark on baseball history as Tony Stone, she played her way onto several men's semi-pro and professional baseball teams, most notably replacing Hank Aaron in Indianapolis when he was called up to the big leagues. Now, along the way, Ms. Stone had to overcome many obstacles put before her due to gender, economics, and yes, race. Now, what struck me in today's story was Marcinia's continual respect for her elders and the support that she received from the boys who played with her and knew and valued her abilities. What really seemed to keep Marcinia going was the deep joy that she experienced when playing. My wish is that each of us discovers a playful activity that nourishes us in the same deep way.
Thank you, Dave. That story was wonderful, and it brought tears to my eyes at the end when she got to go because she was so impassioned, and really was a beautiful. The fact that it's a true story as well, and that she replaced Hank Aaron. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So the power of play, absolutely, and the power of passion. Those are two things that I heard in that. So Thank you so very much. Now we'd like to move into our reading and meditation. Today's reading and meditation, titled An Exercise for Accessing Playfulness and Delight in Meditation, was adapted from The Meditator's Dilemma by clinical psychologist Bill Morgan. He writes, "Recently, I was watching my 6-year-old niece play on the beach, running toward the water when a wave receded and running back toward me, howling when the next wave crashed on the shore. Her sheer delight was palpable and infectious, and I was fully present, riveted on what was happening. In this moment of clarity, I closed my eyes and I wondered why this sense of vibrancy and joy was not somehow encouraged in meditation instructions. Not long after the beach experience, I had occasion to ask a colleague why he struggled to meditate regularly, and he said, because it's not fun, that's why. Even though we all claim to understand the importance of play to our well-being, somewhere along the way, our inner playful child gets lost in the shuffle. A sense of play is certainly absent in meditation, which in my view is a major cause of frustrating, uninspired practice. Playfulness and its accompanying sense of delight are vital qualities of the inner holding environment needed for meditation. Our cultural inclination is to be overly serious about most things, including meditation. Meditation instructions can conjure up the imagined need for serious, brow-furrowing effort with a sense that there is an ideal or a right way to practice. They often include directions such as focus, bring the mind back, or establish moment-to-moment attention without censorship, just to name a few. These words of guidance are dry and uninviting for most people, and those such as sit still and pay attention dredge up unhappy home or schoolroom memories of admonishments. Participating in any activity that is foreign but supposedly good for us is reminiscent of having to take that really bad tasting cough medicine as a kid. I still remember the time I had strep throat and the disgusting taste of liquid antibiotics. My mother reassured me, "That's okay, it's good for you." It just didn't fly. I needed something sweet. Relaxation and delight add a spoonful of sugar, a sense of comfort and sweetness to the inner milieu. I suggest putting these first in meditation rather than viewing them as mere byproducts of our practice. We want to feel good as soon as possible, which is the best enticement for learning and continuing with meditation. The Buddha encouraged this approach by introducing calming practices to his students. These stabilizing techniques were clearly prerequisites for mindfulness practices, leading to deeper understanding and insight. There are many descriptions of the sweetness, the sukha, of concentrated states of mind and how they are more deeply satisfying than sensory pleasures. Westerners have trouble accessing sukha in this classic manner because it takes us hundreds of hours of formal practice in a retreat environment to begin to access these states. However, we can, with far less practice and some creativity, begin to consciously experience some degree of relaxation and delight without external support. Learning how to create a sense of lighthearted ease within a few minutes can be a simple act of self-care in meditation. A few preliminary tips about practicing the technique that will follow. Allow yourself to feel settled, letting the breath be soothing to you. The initial images that come to mind may not be clear or steady and might seem random or disconnected. However, the imagery is simply a gateway for allowing the joyful feelings associated with the memory to arise. This is what matters, not the precision of the memory or image. And number 3, you cannot fail at this exercise. Remember, this is just a practice. It is a practice. Meditation is a practice. Sometimes delight will arise fleetingly, and you might try to get it back using control, which creates tension. Delight cannot be coerced. Simply relax and allow the feelings to return or not. So we'll get ready for our playfulest meditation exercise that you can do along with me now and try again at home. First, establish some degree of relaxation and ease in your body and your breath, as if you are sitting in a warm and comforting bath, feeling the small knots of tension dissolving, letting go more and more with each breath. Take your time and relax. When you feel relaxed and your breath is easy, allow a memory of a happy moment to arise, one in which you were filled with delight and the energy that brings. Continue to allow your breath to be natural and relaxed. Stay with the flow of any images that come and perhaps any sounds that are associated with this memory scene. As the memory unfolds, bring attention to how you felt during that experience. Let yourself savor the delight, the joy, the exuberance. Allow these feelings to spread throughout your body and mind. Let an inner smile form as you feel them. A sense of delight strengthens. Let go of the imagery, sitting and breathing in this atmosphere of playful ease and relaxation that has been created. If tension creeps in or the mind begins to wander, simply return again to the flow of imagery of this uplifting scene. And when you are ready, return to a normal state of waking and continue to enjoy these feelings.
Good morning. And I must say this before I start. I'm coming off of a cold, so please forgive me if I have to excuse myself for a second and either cough or sneeze. But so forgive me right now, and let's get into this. Today's reflection is about the power of play, but perhaps from a perspective that you haven't thought about before. I'm in a distinct position in life where this subject speaks to me personally about precisely what the power of play is. Now, in an adult world, the power of play is mostly regarded as kid stuff. I mean, let's face it. My guess is that for most people, When the word play comes up, we think about kids playing tag or hide and seek, running, jumping, rolling around outside or inside, and everything that goes into that. Almost like kids play and adults don't. Well, the truth of the matter is that each and every one of us plays every day, and we may not even realize it. And for most of us, play starts from the very moment a person is born, which in itself testifies to how important playing is. I'm sure everyone out there is thinking, what the heck is this all about? But what I just said is true, because who doesn't know a parent with a newborn that doesn't do goofy stuff like making funny sounds, making faces, dancing around, saying unintelligible, silly things to their new child in an effort to elicit a smirk or a chortle, a giggle, a belly laugh? Mothers and fathers will literally begin acting like children just to play with their kids and bond with them in this very special way. And in case you didn't know, scientific studies support the fact that happy kids make for happy and well-adjusted adults. Playing on every level relieves stress, stimulates your brain, gives you satisfaction, and just makes you feel good. That alone means that the power of play can literally change the way your life works out. And that's some power right there, isn't it? But let's take this in a different direction here. For the most part, I am speaking to adults right now, and probably very few kids are watching at this moment. And if there are any kids out there, go play. Now, for most adults, play doesn't always mean play, even if it actually does mean play. And now that I have everyone confused by this, please hear me out. My mother used to say, I'm going to go play in the garden. Well, she certainly didn't mean she was going to roll around in the dirt with arugula, excuse me, or dance a jig with the roses, that's for sure. As you would expect, she would till the soil, plant plants, pull weeds, fertilize, and water everything down. Now, in a technical sense, she really wasn't playing. However, what she was doing relieved stress, stimulated her brain, gave her immense satisfaction, and ultimately made her feel good. So, was she playing or was she not? Here's something else. We knew a couple who went to Rome on vacation to go and play. Well, I can assure you they weren't running down the streets of Rome playing tag, and they sure weren't playing hide and seek in the Colosseum either. Although, when you think about that, that does kind of sound fun, at least to me anyway. As you would expect, their idea of playing was getting a taste of the culture of a different country, sampling the cuisine, laying out on the beach of the Mediterranean Sea, taking in the nightlife, and everything else you do to experience the difference between the two countries. And guess what? Being away from the usual grind of home relieved stress, stimulated their brains, gave them satisfaction, and made them feel good. What they were doing, exactly what playing does. Yet, in a purely technical sense, they were never actually playing. Okay, so what I have just mentioned is pretty much playing without playing, even though it's called play. Think about this. When does play have nothing to do with play, even though the very word is used to describe it? Now we're getting somewhere, aren't we? With a play on words, we use a word to describe something, even if it is not really correct, mainly because That word has become so popular in our culture that it has taken on a universal meaning for a specific product or an action. For example, when you use a little medical adhesive bandage for a cut on your finger or your toe or where have you, I'll bet you called it a Band-Aid. Band-Aid is actually a registered name for a bandage product that has become so popular. The word Band-Aid has become a generic name for adhesive bandage, no matter who makes them. Another case in point are hook and loop fasteners, or as they are commonly called, Velcro. I'm willing to bet that virtually every hook and loop fastener made is called Velcro, even though that is just the name given to the original hook and loop fastener. Many companies now make these same exact type of fasteners, and none of them are actually Velcro, but we universally call them that. And just for a bit of trivia here, the first time Velcro was actually used was in the TV series Star Trek. The producers wanted a material that was sticky so that phasers and communicators could just be stuck onto material like something magical out of the future. But in essence, just like the example above, the power of the definition of play has become so universal, as in having fun, stress release, etc., that it has nothing to do with playing at all. I mean, when was the last time you went to an actual play? A few services ago, did you watch the band Kaleidoscope play? How many of you go to a casino to play the slots or to the racetrack and play the horses? When I go fishing, once hooked, I play a fish to the boat. As you can see, in all of those instances, using the word play is a total play on words. We surely don't envision Kaleidoscope chasing each other around the stage and yelling, "Tag, you're it." You aren't going to be making baby noises when you play a slot machine, unless possibly you win the big jackpot. You won't be rolling around with a horse on the racetrack. And I don't go swimming with fish, no matter how hot it is. Yet we use the word play to describe all of these pursuits. But on the whole, by engaging in these activities, for the most part, you are getting the same type of pleasure and gratification out of them as you would be by actually playing. So even though you are far removed from what the real physical definition of play is, you are still getting all the benefits. I mean, all bandages are not Band-Aids. All hook and loop fasteners are not Velcro. And all play is not really playing. I became a writer because ever since I was a little kid, I like to play with words. You could take one word, put it at the beginning or end of a sentence, and that sentence might mean two completely different things. Excuse me. For some reason, playing with words just fascinated me. I began to look for really unique words and throw them into sentences while speaking, just so kids would ask, "What the heck are you talking about?" Before everyone began laughing at how funny this actually sounded. Once again, stress relief, satisfaction, etc., and all because I played with words. About a week ago, Deb and I had run across the state to pick up a few things. We were looking at riding in the car for a total of about 6 hours or so, essentially blowing the entire day just to make a run for a 15-minute pickup. But it had to be done. And as we looked forward to spending a potentially pretty boring time sitting around in a car for the next 6 hours, we decided to play. The entire way out there and back, we told each other stories, made up goofy songs and sang them, made each other laugh with stupid jokes, quips, and bawdy poetry, and just had a really good time. We stopped at the halfway point, explored a little dairy in a small town, got some yummy custard in a waffle cone. I think those waffle cones are actually handmade. They're huge. Oh, lovely, yummy. Picked up some other snacks. And by the time we got home, yes, we were certainly tired. But that whole nearly 6 hours on the road felt more like only an hour. Because, as they say, time flies when you're having fun. And we certainly had fun. Or as one could say, we played all the way there and back, which is another example of the power of play. Here's one more thing, and it's why this subject is personal. I know firsthand about the power of play. I was very, very fortunate to grow up in a family that understood this power and how it made us all a better family because of it. My dad had a very rugged life when he was a kid, working in a butcher shop with his father when he was a child. Before he was 10 years old, he knew all the cuts of meat and could wield a butcher knife like a pro. But there was so little playtime in his young life that at 12 years old, he ran away to join the circus just so he could have fun. Imagine that, running away to join the circus when you're 12. Hey, this is a true story. No one in his immediate family even knew he had gone. He just left, up and left, and traveled the country working in the circus. He looked at a circus and they all seemed to be having fun, and that's exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to have fun. At 16 years old, 4 years later, after being on the road, he showed back up at home. And I assure you, he wasn't looking to cut sides of beef anymore either. He enlisted in World War II, and when the war was over, he got married and began working in a foundry. Now, back in the day, if you know anything about foundries, that meant working in a hot and dusty environment, pouring molten metal, which I can't even imagine. And I'll tell you what, that's a hard job. And as he and my mom began our family, he realized that being exhausted every night after work was not going to be good for the kind of husband and father that he longed to be. So, after 7 years of foundry work, he took a job as an insurance agent, which was almost like being self-employed. And that finally gave him time to be with the family and have playtime. We began to have family play nights, like board games, cards, word games, and things of that nature. He would come outside with me and my buddies and pitch baseball for us during sandlot games, or throw the football around with us and be the official quarterback for the whole football game. Still amazing to this day. He was in his mid-40s when he was doing this, and he's acting like a teenager. And I have never seen him smile or laugh as much when we were all playing together like this. No other father of any of my buddies did these kind of things with us, except for my dad. It was playtime. He loved to play. And even though my dad missed being able to do this as a kid, he made up for it by being able to do all of this because of the family he had. I mean, subject, power of play. You want to talk about that power of play? This is what it's all about. And that's why this subject speaks to me so poignantly. So go out and play. whether you're actually playing or doing something that's called playing. Because as long as you are fulfilled with what you are doing, you will have unleashed the power that is play.
UU Church West's Split the Plate program is one of outreach and generosity. Each month, we give half of all undesignated offerings to a nonprofit organization to help us live our Unitarian Universalist values and to serve our community. Our Split the Plate partner for June through mid-July is Groundwork Milwaukee. Groundwork is focused on bringing people into contact with the natural world in projects that benefit both people and the environment. For example, Groundwork engages at-risk youth in the transformation of brownfields into community spaces such as gardens and orchards. Groundwork also focuses on protection of our urban waters with projects such as installing rainwater harvesting structures and restoring habitat for aquatic native species. For example, Groundwork played a major role in the redevelopment of the Kinnickinnick watershed, which had been named one of the top 10 most endangered rivers in the country. All this while providing environmental education and job training for disadvantaged youth. Be sure to check the article on Groundwork in the weekly e-news for more information on all the great work that is being done by this organization. To support Groundwork Milwaukee anytime this month, go to the UUCW website's Donate tab, select Split the Plate from the menu, or you can text or email your donation today using the information found here. Today, I thank you for your generosity to Groundwork Milwaukee.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Dale. That was very enjoyable. So this is the time where we have our final hymn of the day. And if you are so inclined, we invite you to join us in singing hymn number 118. We want to end this sermon with a little bit of shining our light. So this is performed by our music director, and this little light of mine, hymn number 118. Please join us now.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Thank you, Jen. And thank you, everyone who put together today's service, especially to Dale for his reflection on the power of play. In closing, I would like to leave you with these words by the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection. our concerns, our care for each other, our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving, and be playful. Have a blessed and joyful day.